Rankings.
Hello and welcome to round 19 of the TPO Rankings show, a show all about Australian football through the lens of the TPO Rankings. You can think of it like the FIFA World Rankings, but for Australian football clubs. Jake joins me on Skype via Brisbane. No. Stuffed that one up, didn't I?
Don't edit that. That's
Yeah, I
brilliant.
won't. Jake joins me on Skype via Brisbane.
From Brisbane via
How are you,
Skype.
Jake? Who knows? Not enough sleep with this bloody World Cup. I tell you what, my brain is just gone.
I think that's my favourite bit so far. We should put that in every week.
No worries.
I'm going well, Cody.
Yeah, that's the way. All right, guys. So tonight, the FFA Cup draw was on Tuesday night. We did a quick little Facebook Live over there. Well, didn't turn out too quick. It was about bloody half an hour at the end of it. We ran through the games that excite us, maybe bore us a bit. But tonight we're given, I think we've got 7 games that we're taking a bit more of an in-depth look at, the games that excite us the most. But before we do that, we did preview a handful of games, a small handful. I think there was four games last week. And so we're going to quickly run through those games very quickly because we want to move on to FFA Cup. But some big games on the weekend. And I'll go with my 2 games first. So I previewed Sydney Olympic versus Marconi Stallions. Now, we predicted an Olympic win. The supporters on Instagram stories, 80% of you also voted for Olympic. The result, 2-1 Olympic over Marconi. So Olympic moved 2 spots up the TPO rankings to 16th. Now ahead of Avondale and Metro Stars, while Marconi fall 4 spots to 33rd. My next game was in the New South Wales NPL 2, and that was St George at home to Mount Druitt Town Rangers. Mount Druitt we're heading into that game as favourites, top of the table. The supporters, 55% of you voted Mount Druitt win, so it was pretty close there. The result, St George getting a 2-0, well, I wouldn't say too much of an upset, but I think they are third on the table, so a bit unexpected. But yeah, St George with that win move up 5 places to 76th on the TPO rankings. Mount Druitt down 4 places to 72nd, so they're getting pretty competitive now. Very close on the rankings. Jake, your 2 games.
Yeah, so my first one was in Western Australia, and it was Bayswater City who were out in front in the NPL there, playing Coburn City. We had pretty overwhelming favourites being Bayswater City with about a 70% chance of winning. This one was really close in the voting with you guys, the supporters, saying 52% of you 52% of you went with Bayswater, 48% with Coburn. The 48% of you would have been right though. So Coburn got up 2-1, so we were both wrong there. And with that result and some other results in that league last weekend, the Perth Glory youth team's actually gone to the top of the NPL there. On the TPO rankings, as a result of this game, Bayswater dropped 2 places down to 37th, and Coburn moved up 4 places to 74th. My other game of the weekend was in the Northern New South Wales NPL, and it was Edgeworth Eagles, Broadmeadow Magic, top of the table clash. We had Edgeworth Eagles as the favourites. We actually differed to you guys, the supporters, on this one. So you voted, 70% of you voted for Broadmeadow, and the result was a 0-0 draw. So this is one of those ones that gets scrapped. Neither of us get the points from the voting. And because of that draw, they were very close on the TPO rankings beforehand. They've actually come out pretty much unchanged. Broadmeadow actually move up 1 spot just because of some of the clubs around them moving, but no big changes there.
Okay, so out of the 4 games, 1 was a draw, so we scrapped that, and we both got one game correct. So not a great showing, just 1 out of 3, which takes the TPO supporters to 30 points in the season, and TPO rankings, us, we're on 33, so 3 points ahead. Okay, Jake, any other rankings you'd like to point out? Ranking changes, sorry?
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones. So in terms of the top 25, Adelaide Comets have fallen 4 places from the 21st down to 25th, so they're just inside. They lost to the bottom of the table, Sturt Lions, 2-0, so that was a big upset. Biggest move up the rankings in total, so across the whole rankings for the week, was Mounties Wanderers from the New South Wales NPL 2. They had a 2-0 win over Central Coast Mariners youth team who were doing quite well, or are doing quite well. And Port Darwin was the other one that moved up quite a bit. They had their first win, get this, in over 12 months. So it's the first win of this season. Last season they won 1 game, and that was in May. So it's a big win, and that was over Palmerston Rovers. And because of that, Palmerston Rovers have fallen quite a way down the rankings. And finally, the lowest ranked side in the rankings out of all 362 clubs has changed. It is now Coolum Dolphins from the Sunshine Coast Premier League, and they fell as a result of a 3-1 loss to Caloundra FC. Cody, you guys, so you've sent Coolum to the bottom of the rankings.
We have indeed, and I hurt my knee in that game, so it came at a cost to me anyway. No, it's all good. Okay, that's we breezed through that one, and we're not previewing any games this week just because we really want to focus on FFA Cup. I'm going to quickly mention all the games, and then we're going to look at a bit more in depth the 7 or so games that excite us the most. So the first 3 games are the A-League games, which don't excite Jake or myself at all. Is Adelaide United hosting Central Coast Mariners, Perth Glory hosting Melbourne Victory, and Brisbane Roar hosting Melbourne City. Now we get into the more important games, and that's North Coast City drawing Devonport Strikers, the team from Tasmania. Port Melbourne Sharks hosting Apia Leichhardt. In Queensland, which is a disappointing, we spoke about this on our Facebook Live 2 nights ago, Jake, or last night actually, 1 night ago.
Yeah.
Lions, like I said, World Cup, has got us all bent out of shape. Lions hosting Olympic, which is a bit of a disappointment for the 2 Queensland sides to be facing each other. Would have loved to see them playing teams from other states. Heidelberg United hosting Charlestown City Blues, the team from Northern New South Wales. Guelph, Croatia, the I think 3rd or 4th bottom-ranked team out of all the FFA Cup teams hosting from Western Australia in Div 1, hosting Adelaide Comets. Canberra FC hosting Broadmeadow Magic. Cairns, the travel game, the travel derby, I guess you could call this travel fixture. Cairns FC hosting Armidale from Western Australia. Bonnyrigg White Eagles hosting Hakoah in another sort of interstate game. One of the Jake, I think this is your pick of the round. Avondale hosting Marconi. Hellenic from Northern Territory playing Western Sydney Wanderers. They're going to get smashed. Gold Coast Knights playing Newcastle Jets. I think that'll be closer than people think. Bentley Greens in another game we're definitely going to preview, playing Wellington Phoenix, and Rockdale City Suns playing Sydney FC. So there's your 16 games. Jake, do you just want to maybe kick us off with one of the 7 games, and we'll just dive in and see what comes?
Yeah, let's do that. So you mentioned it, and I'll start there. It's my pick for game of the round, or the one that I'm probably most excited about, and that's Avondale FC from Victoria versus Marconi Stallions from New South Wales. Mm-hmm. There's 2 games this round of 32, 2 fixtures, which are New South Wales versus Victoria, and those sort of games excite me quite a bit just because they're the 2 strongest state MPLs in the country. This one probably includes the 2 clubs that are a little bit more evenly matched, which is why I've picked this one. So Avondale flying at the moment in Victoria. They've kind of had a bit of a stutter the last couple of weeks, but they're in 3rd and trying to chase down Heidelberg and Bentley Greens, looking quite strong. And it's the first time they've made the FFA Cup, or the round 32. And Marconi Stallions, obviously a big club from back in the NSL days, and they've reached this stage previously. I think it was 2016 or 15. I don't have that in front of me, but we've just pulled together. We'll get an image up there, but for those listening at home, I'll just run through some of the very hot, the basic stats. We've run some probabilities based on the current TPO rankings of each of these clubs, and obviously the home team has a bit of a home advantage, and that's factored into these probabilities as well. As it stands right now, Avondale FC would be the favourites in this game by about, we've put them at a 56% chance of winning, and Marconi about a 23%. So it's reasonably favoured to the Victorian club side in this one. Avondale are ranked 17th best club in the country, and Marconi are down in 33rd. But with these ones, it's always hard to know without seeing them play each other. I don't know that these 2 clubs have ever played each other, so it'll be an interesting one, and probably one that I would expect to be reasonably close, and I'm hoping that it's one of the ones that's live streamed. Yeah,
I dare say it will be, Jake. Cool, thanks for that. I'll move on to the next one. And just, I don't have the exact dates in front of me, but I believe it's late July, early August, all these fixtures will be played. So, okay, next game, which definitely excites us as well, is Bentley Greens versus Wellington Phoenix. Now, Bentley Greens have been above Wellington Phoenix on the rankings this year. At the moment, they're slightly below, one spot below. Wellington in at 11th in the country, Bentley Greens 12th. So, but there's still, like we said, a month or so until these fixtures. Bentley Greens could jump back up above Wellington and maybe even go into the game as favourites, especially being at home. So that even right now they may be favourites. Actually, what am I guessing for when Jake's actually done the probabilities? Yeah, so isn't that funny? We've got Bentley Greens as favourites, 41.7% probability of winning compared to Wellington Phoenix, 35.4%. And I reckon that stacks up. This is one game I really, really, really want to watch, along with that Avondale game. So, all right, Jake, you want to touch on the next game?
Yeah, definitely. And we should mention as well that we're still, like you said, a month away from these games being played, so things can happen. Form can, especially for these NPL clubs, go up and down. So Bentley Greens, as we sit here today, are favourites, but if they have a string of losses by the time we get around to the game, they might have fallen down the rankings, and that might change. So the next one that I've pulled out, which I'm interested in, is Guelph Croatia from the Western Australian Division 1 versus Adelaide Comets from the South Australian NPL. Both clubs that haven't been to this stage of the competition before. Adelaide Comets going to be clear favourites based purely on the rankings. They're the 25th best club at the moment in the country, and Guelph Croatia down in 140th. But if you look at the TPO score of Guelph Croatia in particular, they've only been in the rankings for 2 years now. They were playing in kind of the amateur divisions below or outside of in leagues that we don't cover. And in the 2 years, or the 1.5 years that they've been in our rankings, they've been climbing quite rapidly. So maybe that ranking of 140th is still a bit low, and the results would probably indicate that. So although our simulations, I guess, are predicting that Adelaide Comets will have a 79% probability of winning, and Guelph Croatia only about an 8.5%, I think it'll be a little bit closer than that, particularly with Guelph Croatia at home. So the South Australian team having to travel. And it'll be interesting to see whether like I said, Adelaide Comets having a reasonably good year in the South Australian PL, how are they going to stack up against a Western Australian Division 1 side?
Yeah, I can't wait for this one as well. And if Guelph do manage to get a result from this, they expect them to gain a lot of TPO points. Obviously because huge. Of the huge gap in rankings, 25 compared to 140, but also there's a little bit more of a weighting factor behind these FFA Cup games. Okay, on to the next game, and obviously you couldn't go past Heidelberg playing the best ranked non-A-League club in the country, hosting Charlestown City Blues. Now on paper, they're massive favourites. They're 9th in the rankings. Charlestown City Blues 92nd. They're 91.5% probability of winning at this date of recording. But I don't know, Charlestown City, they're doing all right this year. They had a good start. They've dropped off pace over the last couple of weeks, but expect that to be a closer game than I think people will give credit to. I think could go down to the wire, but really looking forward to that one as well. Jake, I think we've got a couple more games here.
Yep, so the next one I had here was Northcote City from Victoria versus Devonport City Strikers from Tasmania. Probably without looking at the stats at all, the initial impression for most people is probably that the Victorian club would be heavy favourites and probably win this one quite easily. Based on the rankings, it's actually a lot closer than what people would have thought. So Northcote City currently ranked 52nd in the country, Devonport ranked 67th, so not all that far behind. And Devonport had to beat off South Hobart plus a few others to get to this point, as well as beating South Hobart in the NPL recently as well, and sitting second there. Northcote City sitting in the relegation zone or around that relegation battle in Victoria, so that's why it's probably a bit closer than what people realise. Our numbers are saying Northcote City with a 50% chance of winning and Devonport City a 28% probability. So it's still Northcote's still the favourites. Probably just looking back at some of our numbers back in like the second half of 2016 and even part of 2017, Devonport City were actually ranked higher than Northcote, and it's only been towards the back end of last year where Devonport fell away and dropped quite a bit, and in 2018, as we said, they're starting to climb again. So I'm interested in this one just because I think it'll be closer than what people realise.
Sure. And I love these graphics you put together, Jake, the history of the rankings. So if you actually look back, Northcote, I didn't realise, look how strong they were back in 2013, up near 2,000 points. So if you go to, say, I don't know, Bentley Green's current points is only 2,100. So they're actually, a team that has fallen quite a bit over the years. Not too much. They're still at sort of 1,800, but they were once very highly ranked, obviously. So, that was just a side mention of these graphics. It's interesting to point out.
Apologies to those podcast listeners who aren't
yeah,
seeing.
Of course. Yeah, but This is one that is quite graphic heavy.
And I should say, it is graphic heavy. But I just on a side note, sorry to cut you off there, because I was interested. In 2013, Northcote City actually won the premiership in Victoria, so that's why they were ranked so highly back then.
Gotcha.
And obviously haven't reached those heights again since then.
The next one I think was my pick of the round. I think I picked a couple, but I think this one's probably my number one, and that's one of these Victorian versus New South Wales games, and that's Port Melbourne Sharks at home to RPA Leichhardt. So RPA, the second best non-A-League club at the moment, according to our rankings. Port Melbourne Sharks in some decent form. I believe they lost last night recently. I think it was last night in a cup game down there to Bentley Greens, like 4 or 5-1. So they did get a bit of a spanking, but before that, they've been in some really good form. So that's why I sort of picked this as one of my go-to games. I think RPA will be too strong there. We've got them down to 71.5% probability of winning. They're a great club, but who knows? I mean, cup game in Victoria with a home crowd, I think it'll be a really, really good game. And Jake, actually, the game you're just about to touch on is probably my number 2 game that really excites me. So you want to wrap us up with this one?
Yeah, and just quickly on your game as well before I do that. So Port Melbourne actually beat Avondale over the weekend as well in the Victorian NPL.
Too, yeah.
So. I picked that Avondale game because Avondale's looking so strong. Port Melbourne's beaten them and sitting in 5th on the ladder, so they're quite strong as well. But as you say, RP are just looking quite good at the moment and favourites there. But this last one that I had picked out that like you said, is one of the ones of the round for us is Canberra FC from obviously the ACT versus Broadmeadow Magic. Broadmeadow having qualified, this is their 4th year in the round of 32. They haven't won a game yet in the round of 32. And Canberra FC, this is their first time at all in the competition at this stage. Broadmeadow ranked right now 24th, Canberra FC ranked 62nd. So even away from home, Broadmeadow are going to be the favourites to get their first win on the national level. Mm-hmm. We've got the numbers sitting at 57% chance of Broadmeadow winning, 23% sitting with Canberra FC. But another one of those ones where we pick Victoria versus New South Wales because they're known as the two, or most people would think they're the two strongest. Outside of that, which obviously I've picked my game of the round based on that, but outside of that, I like picking these sort of games where you've got either North New South Wales or ACT or Tasmania or the other leagues outside of the top 2. Sometimes it's hard to get a gauge on where the strengths kind of sit, and this is one of those games that'll help us get a better understanding of that.
Definitely, yeah. And sorry for the podcast listeners, but if you are viewing this graphic, and again, the TPO points history section at the bottom of this graphic is really cool to see. The points, they're pretty much across. So Canberra back in 2013 were up around nearly 2,000 points, and they've dropped down to about 1,800, so sort of a downward slope with lots of different jagged lines, and Broadmeadow Magic, pretty much the opposite of that, Jake. So it's quite a funny little shape there, and it just goes to show how much teams can change over time in really a short period of time, 5 years. So cool. So that's the games that are really tickled our fancy, I suppose. If you're watching this, let us know the games you're most interested in. And I believe Jake has done images for every single game. So if you are interested, and Jake, I think you've actually posted all these over on a Twitter.
Not all of them. I've put a few up. We'll get them all up on our social media, on probably on Twitter and Facebook, and maybe Instagram if the images work. But we'll get them all up there. But in the meantime, Cody, I just want to very quickly give you a couple of stats from, without going into the detail, but you mentioned before that Hellenic are going to get flogged against Western Sydney. So we've run the numbers on that, and I want to compare that game to the Gold Coast Knights versus Newcastle game.
Yep.
and the last one, Rockdale versus Sydney FC, and just tell you what % we think those non-A-League clubs have. So
Yep.
Rockdale City Suns, we have run the numbers. They have a 3% chance of beating the Sydney FC.
Yep.
So basically nothing, even at home. So we're saying 3%. It's not zero though. Gold Coast Knights against Newcastle United Jets, and Gold Coast Knights being the lowest ranked club in the round of 32. They have a 1% chance of beating Newcastle. So this is the game that you said you think they might be in with a shot, and
I reckon they've
I
at least got 5%.
I don't disagree with you, just because Gold Coast Knights fairly new to the rankings as well over the past couple of years, and like you mentioned, this year they picked up a whole heap of good players that used to be in an NPL side. So, but the rankings are saying 1% chance. Hellenic against Western Sydney Wanderers are given a 2% chance of winning. So out of those three games, the one that's most likely, according to our numbers, is for Sydney FC, the best ranked or the highest ranked club in the country, to lose to Rockdale. And it's saying Hellenic has a better chance of winning than Gold Coast Knights at the moment.
There you go.
So
fair enough. All right. Well, that's the FFA Cup. Now, again, we'll probably touch on some more of this closer to those games in about a month's time. Let us know which games you're most looking forward to seeing, and if you're going to go along to watch a game. Now, Jake, we're not voting, but I believe you just want to quickly mention a few games that are coming this weekend.
Yep, and I'm not even going to give you the reasons why, other than to say they're pretty much all because they're top of the table or near the top of the table sort of clashes and big clubs.
Except one of them, I see you listed is more of a bottom of the table.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's one here. Okay, I'll mention that one separately. But there's three games. If you're in these states, I think they're the game of the round, and get out and watch them. Yeah. In Queensland, it's Western Pride versus Lions.
Huge game.
Top of the table. In New South Wales, it's near top of the table. It's Blacktown City versus Sydney Olympic. And in Tasmania, you've got South Hobart versus Launceston City. So, again, if you're in any of those states, I think get out and watch those ones.
Definitely.
Or see if you can catch the live stream. I think you might get lucky. I haven't seen if the Tasmanian one's live stream, but they are usually pretty good with it. And the other one is Victoria, and like I said, this is actually for the opposite reason. It's the bottom end of the table in that relegation zone. South Melbourne versus Northcote City. So Northcote City, as I mentioned before, already in the relegation zone, and South Melbourne just above it. So this could be quite an important game in determining relegation battle.
Yeah,
so
definitely,
those four games, keep an eye on them.
Cool. Well, thanks for that, Jake. That's all for today, guys. I don't have any asks for you other than just, thanks for following along, and I hope you're enjoying the World Cup. Hope you're excited by the FFA Cup, and that's it. Anything for you, Jake?
No.
Cool.
Maybe just let us know if there's anything else that you would like us to cover, if anything. So
definitely.
Always open to testing out some new things.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining me again, Jake.
Thanks, Cody. Appreciate it.
And thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week.